This is The World This Weekend. Hello, I'm Kieran Outshorn. Coming up on the show tonight, the U.S. and its allies launch more airstrikes against the Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen.
We were able to hit approximately 16 locations that have been targeting not only commercial vessels, but of course other ships transiting that region.
Taiwan chooses a new president in a historic election, but what will the results mean for the relationship between the self-governing island and Beijing?
Taiwan.
That between democracy and authoritarianism, we have chosen to stand on the side of democracy.
And sexual assault charges against the actor Gérard Depardieu divide France, with the high-profile fans coming to his defense, like the country's president, Emmanuel Macron.
I say it as president, and I say it as a citizen. He makes us proud.
That's all coming up later. But first, U.S. President Joe Biden says that he sent a private message to Iran after a second strike by the U.S. on Houthi targets in Yemen. For days now, the Houthi rebel group has been attacking ships in the Red Sea, a vital seaway for Western goods and oil. The Houthis receive funding from Iran, but the Islamic Republic denies any involvement in the shipping attacks. Chris Reyes has the latest.
More U.S. strikes in Yemen. The missiles were launched overnight, striking Houthi radar sites. From the Pentagon, Sabrina Singh.
We are very confident in the impact that we were able to leave on the Houthis.
U.S. Central Command said the strikes were designed to degrade the Houthis' ability to attack maritime vessels in the Red Sea, attacks that have been intensifying since Israel's offensive in Gaza, prompting the U.S. and the U.K. to launch a bigger strike on Thursday with support from Canada and other countries. Iona Craig is a journalist with expertise on the region. She said Houthi rebels seem undeterred by Western retaliation.
Being bombed has become part of our identity. We don't care.
That's what some rebels are saying, says Craig.
That really speaks to the rise and spread of anti-American and Western sentiment in Yemen as they see it as America and her allies supporting and indeed facilitating the war by Israel in Gaza.
Ceasefire! Ceasefire!
That anger at the West in full display in London and Washington, D.C., where massive protests were held today in support of Palestinians. Ismail Patel is with Friends of Al-Aqsa.
This is a very dangerous situation, and we have to curb this war path that our government is taking.
Miranda Pinch is a Jewish-British protester.
There are a lot of Jews in this country who are not happy, beyond not happy, with what Israel is doing.
In D.C., Sophia Ally traveled from New Jersey to attend the rally.
We're hoping to have Biden call an end to this. We're hoping that Biden will reach out to Israel and have them stop bombing and killing innocent people.
Today, Hamas leadership and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held news conferences, both refusing to back down from the war. Houthi rebels saying the same for their fight, vowing retaliation and insisting the strikes have not hurt their capabilities. Craig expects more Houthi strikes using various means.
I think we can expect more strikes. They've used ballistic missiles, anti-ship ballistic missiles, anti-ship cruise missiles, drones. We're probably going to see a lot more drones, but other elements.
Iran has denied supplying the Houthis with weapons despite allegations. Before boarding Marine One for Camp David, President Biden confirmed that the U.S. has sent a private message to Iran about U.S. strikes on Houthi rebels. Biden added that he's confident the U.S. is well prepared. Biden has promised to keep responding if Houthi rebels don't stop. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
Thousands of people came together in Tel Aviv. Protesters chant, "Now, now," holding up posters of hostages as they demand that Israel's government work harder for their safe return. The 24-hour demonstration is to mark 100 days since the October 7th attack by Hamas. 1,200 people were killed and 240 were taken hostage. During a temporary ceasefire in November, Hamas released 105 hostages, but there's been no let-up to the war since then. Well, voters in Taiwan have elected a new president. Current Vice President William Lai will take over the top job in May. It's the third straight win for his Democratic Progressive Party. The result means frosty relations between China and Taiwan will likely remain. Patrick Falk reports from Taipei.
Speaking to supporters in Taipei, President-elect William Lai thanks all Taiwanese voters for defending democracy.
In this election, Taiwan is telling the whole world that between democracy and authoritarianism, we have chosen to stand on the side of democracy.
Among those who cast their ballots early on Saturday was outgoing President Tsai Ing-wen. She's stepping down after reaching the end of her two-term limit. She asks onlookers if they've voted yet. Earlier, she told another group citizens in a democratic country can decide the future of the country with one vote. Taiwan has an in-person voting system. On one hand, it protects it from interference. On the other, it means many Taiwanese that are not able to do so don't get a say. At stake is the future of an island seen as a key flashpoint in the geopolitical rivalry between China and the US. Beijing claims Taiwan as part of its sovereign territory and doesn't rule out taking it by force. It sees Lai and his Democratic Progressive Party as separatists. China mounted a campaign of intimidation against people in Taiwan in the lead-up to the vote. Today, Taiwan's defense ministry said it spotted 8 Chinese aircraft and 6 naval vessels nearby. But many people, like 47-year-old Li Eru, are numb to Beijing's threats.
Taiwan is not alone in the international order, and conflict can only be resolved by peaceful dialogue.
Lai insists he's open to engagement with China, but is also committed to boosting the island's defenses. His opponent, Hou Yo-yi of the Chinese Nationalist Party, conceded gracefully. I respect the final decision of the Taiwanese people, he says. The Chinese Nationalist Party and the newly formed Taiwan People's Party both favor warmer relations with Beijing. Their defeat worries supporters like student Victor Lin.
I think that in the future for the 4 years will be the dark in Taiwan. Very, very dark.
Retired teacher Li Wai-kai moved from Hong Kong to Taiwan 3 years ago. He couldn't vote, but says ignoring China's threats is a mistake and that its leader, Xi Jinping, can't be trusted.
It's not possible to talk about peaceful coexistence with him.
Today's result shows many people in Taiwan share his skepticism. Patrick Falk for CBC News, Taipei.
Sirens wail in Ukraine's capital Kyiv as the city braces for a Russian attack. Many parts of the country were targeted by an overnight barrage of missiles and drone strikes. Ukraine's Air Force says there were 40 attacks, and it claims it was able to shoot down about half of them.
La Russie espère que l'Ukraine et ses soutiens.
Just hours later, France's foreign minister stands in Kyiv with his Ukrainian counterpart, promising a defense production partnership. His support comes just a day after Britain's Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, also visited to sign a new security agreement, an announcement of more military funding for Ukraine. The boost from the two allies comes as the war nears its 2-year mark, and political infighting in the United States and the European Union is holding up other major packages of military assistance. Rescue crews in Colombia used bulldozers to search for potential survivors of a major mudslide. At least 33 people were killed after a mudslide came down on a busy highway in the country's northwest region on Friday. The slide was triggered by heavy rains, sweeping away several cars. At least another 19 people have been injured. An unknown number of people are still missing. Well, from heavy snowfall in the east to a deep freeze out west, there are winter weather warnings across much of Canada. As Philip Lishanek reports, the temperature in BC and the prairies has plunged to a dangerous, record-breaking low.
It may be late, but it's here. Dangerously cold Arctic air from a polar vortex hit BC and Alberta this week. Newcomers in hard-hit areas took to TikTok to express their shock.
Come to Canada. Come! Leave that beach! Minus 20 degrees, come!
After a mild holiday season, many reacted with surprise as temperatures suddenly dipped to the minus 40 Celsius, along with biting winds that make it feel more like minus 50.
No walkies for Bobo in minus 40.
In Calgary, international student Vishal Arora says it's taking some getting used to.
We are having 3 layers of clothes, I guess, so it's too much cold this time.
Environment Canada issued an extreme cold warning alert for Alberta, advising those who work outside to take frequent warming breaks. Like Satch Srong, whose crew is keeping Calgary's LRT platforms clear of snow.
Difficult to work outside.
City paramedics say they're dealing with an increased number of calls for things like hypothermia and frostbite. In BC, freezing cold temperatures are shattering records. Environment Canada says Vancouver hasn't been this cold since 1937. Jamal Hamoud and his neighbors helped push cars up the hill in the Mount Pleasant area of the city.
Being in stressful situations, it sucks. You're sliding down, you think you're going to hit cars. It's a nightmare. So it's just an easy thing you can do.
The weather has had a big impact on travel. WestJet canceled more than 120 more flights today. Saskatchewan and Manitoba are also under extreme cold weather warnings. James Bogus is head of the Regina Airport Authority.
We're seeing some delays with things like de-icing and also, frankly, just cold temperatures and things taking a little bit longer.
Christine Niemchuk is with CAA Saskatchewan. She warns there's an extremely long wait for roadside assistance, so people should take precautions like making sure the gas tank is full.
If you find yourself stranded, you will need in your car when you intermittently need to start it to provide some warmth in the vehicle.
In regions along the St. Lawrence River like Quebec City and Montreal, more snow and plummeting temperatures are expected, while Nova Scotia and New Brunswick are under freezing rain, snow, and storm surge warnings from another nor'easter. And the forecast for the east and west of the country is calling for more of the same through February. Philip Lishanok, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, this wintry blast of weather is affecting the NFL playoffs in the United States. Spectators in Kansas City, Missouri will have to deal with wind chill temperatures of minus 25 for the game this evening, but this fan says that's not going to be that big an issue.
If the guys are going to be out there, some of us hardcore fans can be out there right there with them, so that's the point.
Well, the Buffalo Bills game scheduled for tomorrow has already been postponed as well to Monday because of snowfall. Well, for nearly 80 years, a nuclear laboratory has operated in Chalk River in the heart of the Ottawa Valley. And this week, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission approved a project to build a radioactive waste facility at the site. But as Nicole Williams tells us, the project is facing fierce opposition from multiple First Nations.
Very, very, very disappointed.
That's Lance Raymond, chief of Kabawik First Nation in Quebec. His community, one of 10 federally recognized Algonquin communities that are against the project by Canadian National Laboratories, or CNL. It would be on unceded Algonquin territory, and there's major concerns about contamination to the Ottawa River. Jane Toller is with the warden in Pontiac, Quebec, which borders the river.
There can always be seepage, there can always be leaching.
The Ottawa River flows downstream toward Ottawa and Montreal and is just a kilometer away from Chalk River, where the waste site would be built. The river is a source of drinking water for some people who live nearby. Raymond says it's not worth the risk.
We are very fearful that in 10, 15, 20 years, this project will continue to pose a risk and a danger to my members and in general to all Canadians who use and depend on the Ottawa River as their drinking water source.
A final report from the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission says it's unlikely the facility will cause significant damage to the environment. It also determined CNL did its part in consulting and accommodating Indigenous groups throughout the process. Chief Dylan Whiteduck of Kitigan-Zibi First Nation disagrees.
They always knew they wanted to do this, and they were going to do it with or without us.
Megan Vickard is with Canadian Nuclear Laboratories. She says only low-level radioactive waste will be stored there. Items like contaminated mops, protective clothing, and some commercial waste.
We're committed to continued engagement with those Indigenous nations and communities
and we fully intend to meet all the commitments that we've made to them and continue to offer them an opportunity to be involved in the project.
Pikwakanagan First Nation is the only Indigenous group to give consent to the project and, in fact, has entered into a partnership with CNL. Greg Sarzan is chief.
We're not advocating for the nuclear industry, but the fact is that it is there. It is operating, and we're not able to remove the nuclear waste. It has to be cleaned up. It has to be stored somewhere, and this is the best option.
Sarzan says a number of adjustments have been made to the project, all which give the First Nation confidence that any risk to the surrounding environment is low. But some of the other Algonquin leaders plan to continue to fight the project. Teams, including White Ducks, exploring legal action.
The Algonquins, we're going to be here. We've been here from the very beginning, and we're going to be here for the next millennial for another million years. So it's not over yet.
A construction date has not been set. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
A robot barista, a smart doggy door that opens automatically when your pet approaches, and a car that talks to you. This is just a small sample of the many technological marvels unveiled this week at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. James Dunn is a producer with CBC's business unit, and I spoke to him earlier about another big tech story that broke at CES this week.
This week, OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, opened its GPT store. It's a virtual marketplace where you can find all kinds of AI apps that the company calls GPTs that were made with the ChatGPT program. It's the first AI store. I called up the Creative Destruction Lab, a science and tech nonprofit based at the University of Toronto. Here's what their executive director, Sonia Senek, said.
It's a huge deal because the more folks we have using these technologies and getting comfortable with them, the faster the space will grow. And this will bring two sides of the marketplace together.
Okay, so James, what kind of things are we thinking are actually going to be in this marketplace?
It kind of breaks down into things that are fun and things that are functional. For example, on the fun side, there's Yo Mama, a GPT waiting to make up a custom Your Mama joke on any topic you want. There's also BTS Expert, which is ready to answer any question you could imagine about the Korean boy band. On the functional side, there are GPTs to help you write things like resumes or essays. There are GPTs that will build you a website, and some will even design a custom tattoo for you if you're looking for some new ink.
I have a question here because a lot of things you're describing, they feel like things we can already do with GPT. So what's the difference between ChatGPT as it exists now and these new GPTs we're talking about?
So if you're using the original version of ChatGPT, you ask it a question and it pulls an answer from practically the whole internet. With these new GPTs, they're supposed to be much more focused and trained to get more relevant answers and offer better solutions. So you won't get information about Shakespeare if you ask a home reno GPT about installing cedar shakes on your roof.
Now for the million-dollar question, or hopefully it's a little bit less than that, but how much is this going to cost to actually use?
Well, there is a free version, the original version of ChatGPT, but to access this store, you have to pay $20 a month. That also lets you make your own GPTs, and one company that signed up to build a GPT is called Commit from Vancouver. Its GPT automatically researches, finds, and applies to jobs for tech workers. Greg Gunn is the CEO of Commit, and he told me he hopes he can find lots of new clients among OpenAI's 100 million active weekly users. But here's what Gunn says is in it for OpenAI.
What OpenAI is aiming for is if they get the best developers on their platform, they're going to have new features and exciting features that are going to attract and keep users.
Now keep in mind, anybody can go to the ChatGPT store and make a GPT.
Okay, so this is all pretty interesting, but is there a downside to letting, just anyone access and make their own GPTs?
For sure. There are huge worries with AI taking jobs or taking over the world that have been described by the leading thinkers in the field. Gillian Hadfield is a law professor at the University of Toronto and involved in research on AI with the school's Vector Institute. She's worried about the whole idea of people creating a GPT to do really specific tasks for them, almost like a virtual clone.
we could have a lot of basically autonomous agents out there, AI agents, doing stuff on people's behalf in the world, booking them airline tickets and participating in meetings and buying things and sending emails.
So she's thinking about if you create an AI to do something for you and it goes wrong, who's responsible? If your AI buys you a non-refundable plane ticket, are you on the hook?
James, thanks so much for coming in and talking to us about this.
You're welcome.
CBC producer James Dunn here in Toronto. Well, the closure of a pulp mill has dealt a devastating blow to a northern Ontario town. The mill in Terrace Bay will be shut down indefinitely, leaving 1/4 of the small town's population without jobs. Michelle Allen traveled to the community and brings us this report.
The Union Hall in Terrace Bay, Ontario is packed wall to wood-paneled wall with restless steelworkers. As union leaders hand out pamphlets on unemployment insurance and second career training, members are still reeling from the shutdown of the AV Terrace Bay pulp mill earlier this month. Kathy Howe is a shipper in pulp storage.
What's going to happen with us? Why we are temporarily idling?
Workers say they were blindsided by layoffs in early January.
And if the mill closes, these towns will die and it's going to be heartbreaking.
The Terrace Bay pulp mill is the biggest employer in the area. Experts say this is where some of the best pulp in the world is made. But it's not the first time the mill is closed. It fell on hard times in the early 2000s when the pulp and paper industry entered a period of uncertainty. Since then, it's been caught in a cycle of shutting down, changing ownership, then shutting down again when the new owners run out of money.
It's a really bad feeling to know that your main industry has been up and down like a yo-yo.
Jesse Cruz owns the home hardware in Terrace Bay.
You know, so many people have based their lives around that mill.
The pulp mill's owner is Aditya Birla Group, a Fortune 500 company from India. The company says the market for pulp is challenging and they've had to idle the mill. Like many of his constituents, Terrace Bay Mayor Paul Malashewski worked at the mill for decades. He's been through multiple cycles of closures and reopenings and knows how it ripples through the region.
The last study they did, when the mill went down in 2009, there's like 1,800 jobs affected by this mill being down.
Malashewski knows relying on the pulp mill as the sole economic driver for the community is risky. But the mayor said diversifying is difficult and expensive for little towns like Terrace Bay. Some in town are disappointed to see yet another company withdraw from Terrace Bay. Gino LeBlanc is a former mill worker who now manages the only grocery store in town.
After 10 years of having price of pulp through the roof, Aditya Birla should have made tons of money. And why is it that a month or 2 months after the price of pulp goes down, that they're closing the doors?
Aditya Birla Group did not respond to multiple requests for comment. There's no word on when or if the Terrace Bay pulp mill will reopen or what the company plans to do, leaving the people of Terrace Bay, once again, waiting for answers. Michelle Allen, CBC News, Terrace Bay, Ontario.
You're listening to The World This Weekend on CBC Radio. I'm Kieran Outshorn. You can listen to this program anytime on the CBC Listen app or on the CBC News YouTube channel. Well, for decades, the film industry in France has supported Gérard Depardieu. The actor has faced multiple accusations of rape and sexual assault, some dating as far back as the 1970s. A recent documentary has revealed even more of Depardieu's sexist behavior and has led to renewed outrage. But as freelance reporter John Lawrenson tells us, many at the top of French society are throwing their support behind the actor.
Austérité.
With more than 200 credits to his name, Gérard Depardieu is one of the most famous French movie stars. But a recent television documentary titled Fall of the Ogre has exposed a rift in France's culture industry. The documentary, shot in 2018, shows Depardieu in North Korea, where he makes obscene comments to a series of women and about a girl of about 10 years old. Depardieu is also under investigation for rape, and at least 13 women have accused him of sexual assault, including actress Sarah Brooks.
He put his hand in my shorts. I pushed him away. He insisted, so I said, "Gérard is putting his hand in my shorts." He said, "I thought you wanted to succeed in movies." And everyone laughed.
After the documentary aired, Swiss broadcaster RTS announced it would no longer broadcast movies where Depardieu plays a leading role, and Quebec stripped the actor of his Order of Quebec, the province's top honour. While in France, Depardieu's ex-wife, actress Carole Bouquet, is one of 50 celebrities who signed a letter titled "Don't Erase Gérard Depardieu." The letter describes Depardieu as the last sacred monster in French film and says an attack on Depardieu is an attack on art itself. Part of the reason France has indulged Gérard Depardieu until now is his life story. He grew up in extreme poverty, the son of a violent alcoholic. He left school at a young age and lived on the streets. Even did a stint in prison for car theft when he was 16. He eventually moved to Paris, took drama lessons, and became famous for playing bad boys.
On n'est pas bien? Si. Paisible.
Olivier Alexandre is a sociology professor with the French Political Science Institute. He says attitudes about Gérard Depardieu can be traced back to how the sexual revolution of the 1960s played out in France.
Gérard Depardieu, c'est l'incarnation du personnage.
In his first big film, he played a sort of outlaw, breaking the constraints put in place by the authority of fathers, policemen, and judges. The artistic milieu questioned these limits, and the slogan of the May 1968 student revolt was, "It is forbidden to forbid."
Alexandre says that slogan has been a core belief of the French cultural elite, at least among those of Depardieu's generation. John Lawrenson for CBC News, Paris.
In Copenhagen, members of the Danish Royal Lifeguards performed the changing of the guard ahead of tomorrow's coronation. 55-year-old Prince Frederik will succeed his mother, Prince Margrethe, who shocked the country by announcing her abdication on New Year's Day. And Danes like Maj-Britt Thomsen appear to have mixed emotions about the change.
When the Queen said she was abdicating, I just cried a little bit. It was a little bit sad. So I'm probably going to do that tomorrow as well because I'm a little bit sentimental.
Prince Frederik and his wife, the Australian-born Princess Mary, will take the throne at a time when polls are showing high support for the monarchy.
What do all Canadians do together? We talk about the weather. What do all Canadians do together?
The band The Arrogant Worms aren't wrong in their song, We Talk About the Weather. If there's one thing Canadians like to do, especially us here in the media, it's talk about bad weather. Although, to be fair, on a weekend like this, with frigid temperatures and howling winds descending on cities across the country, it's a pretty reasonable topic. But here's a fun fact for you as we end the show, a tidbit of Inuit Haujumayatu Hanit, or Inuit traditional knowledge, that I learned while reporting in Iqaluit Nunavut. Down south, fur isn't for everyone, but in many parts of the country, it's an essential tool for staying safe and warm, and knowing which type of fur to use can make all the difference. Take, for example, a hunter's hat. You know, those hats with the fur in the forehead and the flaps that come down over your ears and on your cheek? Well, lots of those hats will have rabbit fur on them, but if you're a person like me with facial hair, they can present a real problem. You see, what happens is you get outside, you start moving around, and all that condensation from your breath, it'll freeze and clump on the rabbit fur, freezing your hat to your face. I know this from first-hand experience. Instead, what you want to do is you want to go for fur that's hollow, like wolf fur or wolverine fur. Because condensation, it doesn't clump on hollow fur. It just turns into hoarfrost, which you can brush away pretty effortlessly. Simple enough, right? But trust me, it makes a huge difference. All right, that's it for this edition of The World This Weekend. I'm Kieran Outshorn. If you're heading out this weekend, check the temperature, dress accordingly, and try to enjoy yourself. Good night.
Should I put on a